As you know, I am M. Price, and I can indeed read. For today's little video, we have some, hopefully that's not exploding the sound, lambic beer. I don't know what lambic beer is, but it comes in raspberry, peach, cherry, and apple flavor. So we're going to try a little bit of it out today. We might do halfsies, and then do the other half another time. I do have a few more video ideas coming up. You know, I kind of like to drop them randomly, keep you on your toes. And let's do this one. Is this cherry? Yeah, cherry beer. We'll see how this one goes. Hopefully this, it's kind of like wrapped in, you know, one of those, it's trying to be fancy. Maybe that's where the lambic comes from. I'll just litter and set it over here. Okay, maybe I don't like this. This has a lot of little, already little red. It's like when you have glitter, you know, it just gets everywhere. Hopefully this doesn't get too much everywhere. Okay, is that enough? Is that enough for me? Maybe over here. Oh, whatever. We're going in. I think that's enough. Hopefully I can... Oh, hey, there's a description on the back. Who would have thunk it? Crafted by wind, brewed through generations. Lindemans Crike. Lambic made from local barley, unmalted wheat, cherry juice, age hops, and wild airborne yeast. Spontaneous fermentation. True lambics are rare. All come from one of the fewer than a dozen breweries in Belgium's Seine River Valley, a region about 15 by 75 miles in size. Lindemans Brewery, family owned since 1822. I wonder, at what point will, say, family owned since 2024 have that same kind of weight? I guess I just can't imagine life 200 years from now, but... Yeah, there's already little red, microplastics of crap on my fingers from opening that. But that's fun. It smells like cherry. Oh geez, that's strong. Not like the alcohol taste, the cherry taste. I mean, it's only I don't know where the proof is on here. I don't know. I'm an alcoholic anyway, so it matters. But it's like drinking cherry syrup almost. Yeah, whatever. Anywho's in. I'm just making sounds. Anywho's in. Back to the topic at hand, or to start the topic at hand. And to be almost distracted because I hear our dog. I hear his collar start to jingle, so if he comes in here, he might sabotage the whole video. Who knows? But that does kind of go hand in hand with, once again, the main topic, which we'll finally get to after 5 minutes, Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a fantasy RPG video game series where spontaneous things, like my dog coming in here to sabotage everything, occur regularly, and it's a very difficult series of games, a very, you guessed it, dark series of games. You know, it's called fantasy, a fantasy series, but it's a sort of dilapidated high fantasy. it's high fantasy because there's crazy sorceries and, crystal golems and basilisks and the general high fantasy trope of just tropes and everything you'd expect. But it's like that, but aged 10,000 years after they all died out. It's like the remnants of all this wonder, and now it's sort of shoddy and very much on the end of its life. And it's something that affected me a lot as a young kid, because the first game came out in like 2011, right? And it was highly impactful to me. For starters, I liked it before it was cool. I didn't quite like it back when it was the game precursor to that, Demon Souls. And quick caveat to people who don't have like a lot of idea of what this is even about or why I'm even doing this, just enjoy the ramble, okay? Enjoy the ramble and enjoy the alcoholic cherry syrup before you. Don't think too much about it. And it came out in 2011. I was like the only kid in my school who was playing it. Everyone else was playing Skyrim, which, released about the same time and took over the world, basically. It was so popular. And it was only until, like, after I had done and good, 200% in Dark Souls, played it numerous times, got all the achievements, done everything, that it kind of blew up on Twitch, which was at that point a sort of nascent art form streaming itself. And these games, this series of not only the Dark Souls games, but the From Software, Soulsborne, Souls-like games from that same company, helped propel Twitch, I guess, in my eyes, because these games are so difficult, so they are so fun to watch people play. And once it got popular, I was like, hey, what the hell? I was talking about Dark Souls for years, and everyone, no one cared. Anyway, all my friends made fun of me, and I'm still bitter about it. But, the first game was so impactful to me, not only from a gameplay point of view, just it being a great game, but there was a lot of philosophy, theology, psychology, just all these amazing things going on in the background of Dark Souls that you sort of link together, piece together with these little fragments of information, because nothing in the game is like directly spoken to you other than like the prologue that kind of says, hey, there was this age of dragons, then this age of fire where these gods came and they got these Lord Souls and they did this stuff, and yeah, forget about it. We don't care about them anymore. Most of them are dead. And through these vague hints and these sort of unreliable narrators and histories, you sort of piece together your own story and your own philosophy and your own sort of system of morality. And I was just absolutely enamored by Dark Souls for the longest time. And then it got popular, and then they announced Dark Souls 2. And you may think, Bryce, Dark Souls 2, that's what you always wanted, right? Oh my god, there's more to it. Well, for starters, Dark Souls 1 ends, and it has a very impactful ending. There are two possible endings, and it's like, yeah, it is universe changing, your choice at the end of the game, and I won't, spoil it for anyone out there. That may be another talk, or who knows, maybe I'll just spoil it at the end of this video as we go along. And I was like, how can you even make a sequel to that? That's wild. And then the other half of that was Hidetaka Miyazaki, the guy who directed Dark Souls, the guy who directed Demon Souls, the game before that, wasn't going to direct Dark Souls 2, as well as they were going to make Dark Souls 2 more streamlined, make it easier for people to pick up on, easier to play, make it accessible to a main audience, as well as make the story pieces more straightforward. Basically, everything I liked about Dark Souls 1 from what I heard, was being stripped away for Dark Souls 2. And then, what made matters even worse is footage started being released of Dark Souls 2, and it looked like a totally different universe. It didn't even look like Dark Souls. It looked like this different fantasy series. And then the controversy on top of that is that when the game was released, there was this huge graphical downgrade from what the previews showed, which of course made people more upset. And with all of this, madness going along with it, with no traditional or no Dark Souls-esque world, you have the director is gone. You have these weird interplays of, what you're previewed and then what you actually get. I never played Dark Souls 2. And not only did I not play it, I condemned it to all my friends and actively avoided it for years until now. But not only did I avoid Dark Souls 2 until now, there was a third game, a third Dark Souls to cap out the Dark Souls trilogy, where Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, made his triumphant return, that everyone says was the best Dark Souls of the series, that everyone says was one of the best games by that company From Software, just in general. And you know what? I avoided that too, because I didn't trust it. I didn't believe it. I saw footage of that, and it looked like it was recycled. You go to the same areas as the first game. You have similar lore to the first game that wasn't contextually similar, but just copy and paste. Yeah, here's the same guy doing the same thing, and nothing's really, changed. And there was even more catering to mass appeal, catering to what people just demanded, and changing the core of the game, the core gameplay experience in general. And I was like, you know what? Screw that. I'm not going to deal with it. So instead, I played Bloodborne. I played Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I played Elden Ring. All these other games by From Software. But I never played Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. But I always kind of wondered about them. And as the years went on, I wondered a little bit more and a little bit more. And as I drifted farther away from my teenage self of, I'm too good to play Dark Souls 2, that's beneath me, I gradually became more and more curious. And about maybe 2 months ago, Dark Souls 2 was on $10 sale or something. And just this last month, Dark Souls 3 was on sale. So I admit, I purchased both games, and I've played through the entirety of both games, beat every single boss of both games, every single area. I have now been through the entire Dark Souls trilogy, and boy do I have some thoughts. God, how do I even start? I guess I'll quick rank the From Software games in general, kind of give a brief explanation. For starters, I've never played Demon Souls, as I didn't have a PlayStation 3, and I don't currently have a PlayStation 5, so I can't play the remake, so I leave Demon Souls out of it. But I would like to play it someday. But I was aware of it too when it came out on PlayStation 3, because I vividly remember the box. And I was like, that game looks so cool. And I was so upset, because I went to the Best Buy, store clerk back when Best Buy was still a thing. And I was like, hey, do you have this game for Xbox? Cute. And it's like, no, sorry, it's only on PlayStation. And I'm like, oh, dang, that game was awesome. I wish I could play it. But alas. So that's actually what helped me really pinpoint Dark Souls when it came out, because it was hailed as, yeah, made the people who made Demon Souls. And I was like, hell yeah, I finally get a little taste of the action. I can play this on Xbox, woohoo for me. So I played that. God, I should probably drink the rest of this to get this video going, if you know what I mean. that is all like, I don't know if I like lambic beer. It's not like oh, you're just draining malt liquor and it just tastes horrible and there's just so much alcohol poison. It's just like, it just feels like syrup, like I'm just drinking sugar water with like a little bit of an alcohol bite in the back. Oh God, I hear, oh God, dog might be approaching. I don't know if you can even pick up on his collar. On this microphone, I have the gain set pretty low, but he's around, let me tell you. And he's featured in several other videos, which do a little scavenger hunt and try to find him, if you will. God, where was I? I'm not like drunk, by the way. This is just my normal scatterbrained self. But I've played every other FromSoft game besides Demon's Souls, and I would rank them. Bloodborne is number 1 at the very top. One of the greatest games ever made. From me personally, the best game I've ever played from a gameplay point of view. It is just top notch. The only real criticism of it is that, the Chalice dungeons are not woefully unbalanced and woefully unfinished, but they know that. It's totally admitted, and I think, honestly, the craziness of the Chalice dungeons kind of adds to the fun, as well as you're supposed to use summons for them, add your friends, and go through them in a big, oh my God, the syrup's getting to me. You're supposed to go through them in a big mess. After that, Dark Souls 1. Once again, peak gaming, just a classic. It's helped inspire. Yeah, sure, Demon's Souls was the real, first one, but Dark Souls really propelled it to like the national stage. Fantastic game. Once again, I think Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1 are among the greatest games of all time. After that, I would put Sekiro. Utterly singular combat system, unlike anything else I've ever played. But there was a pretty harmful pattern in Sekiro that I think actually was introduced more so in Dark Souls 3, and I'll get into it. But I think Sekiro kind of falls short of being one of the best ever, just because, there's a problem we'll get to. But it's still fantastic. I still love it. It's not like these are all still 10 out of 10 games, by the way. It's just very minute differences, very nitpicky things. I would still rather play Sekiro than any other, like Call of Duty or Fortnite or some other garbage. After Sekiro is when it gets difficult, because now you have the other games, which this may come as, this is just me and Bryce being a jerk, but I would say Dark Souls 2 is after that. Dark Souls 2 usually hailed as the worst FromSoft game, the only bad FromSoft game, the black sheep of FromSoft games. I would say is their 4th best. I would put it above Dark Souls 3, because I think Dark Souls 3 is after that, and frankly, I think Elden Ring is last. I don't view Elden Ring as, I don't think Elden Ring would be a 10 out of 10. Bloodborne through Sekiro, 10 out of 10. Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, maybe a 9 or an 8. Elden Ring is a 7. Elden Ring is the only reason Elden Ring has so much accolades and people are lauding it so highly is because Miyazaki is in the period of an artist's life. Same with George R.R. Martin, where no matter what they do, they could take a shit on camera, which some people have. They could take a shit on camera and say, this is the new game, this is the new movie, this is the new book, whatever, and people would say it's a masterpiece. Not intrinsically because their product, their art piece is any good, but because their persona, their public figure is so high and mighty that they're untouchable. I think in 10 years, people aren't going to think Elden Ring was that good. Like Grand Theft Auto 4, People thought Grand Theft Auto 4 was like the greatest game ever when it came out. And now people are like, yeah, kind of sucks, Vice City was way better, San Andreas was way better, People don't like it with retrospect, with the clarity of, going forward in time. I think Elden Ring will not be remembered fondly. When people step away from Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin's persona and from the initial hype of the game's release and look back on it, with clarity. But anyway, Dark Souls 2 and what I think about it. We'll put it back in the... No, we won't. We'll set it over here to the side. Then we'll prepare which one do we want. We'll just start at the back next to the cherry, actually. And we have... Peach. Peach, peach, peach. Let's see if I can ruin my fingers with this one. Oh God. This one's not coming as easy. It's not coming as easy. Oh God. Oh my, I hate this. I hate this. This is harder than some of the Dark Souls 3 bosses. It's harder than all of probably except for 3 of the bosses. God. You know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna get it off now. Yeah, I'm using summons to... I'm using summons to cheat and get it off this shining paper. God. How syrupy is this one? That's smoother. Hey. Peach is a lot better. Or as they pronounce in Lambigia, Petch. So Dark Souls 2. When it initially came out, because I'm a big lore guy, I'm a big story guy. I read several reviews and criticisms that the reason why Dark Souls 2 wasn't as good is because it played like a fan fiction of Dark Souls 1. And I think the reason for that is because, to put it really quick, really simply, because I know I have a lot more stuff to talk about in this video. In Dark Souls 1, at the end of the game, you basically have a choice to... Here's me doing the spoiler thing I promise I want to do. You basically have a choice to prolong the age of light or to let the first flame, which is, don't worry about it, be extinguished and usher in the age of dark. Now, the game kind of leads you on to believe, yeah, age of light, keep it going, it's great. That's what the good guys want. But kind of in a similar parallel, to God and Satan, whether you're a Manichaean heresy fanatic or not, who knows? That's another video. But kind of similar to that, it's not necessarily a good and bad, but more of a different way of viewing things. And there's ways for other characters and other points of view to affect you while you're playing the main game, and realize that you can instead usher in the age of dark, because the age of light is all these gods from the first game that have lost power and that have tried to retain their power, and through trying to retain their power, they've essentially strangled the world. Because the more they keep trying to keep this age of fire going, the worse the world gets. Because there's a natural cycle of light to dark, and because they're not letting the dark come. The world is basically dying, and darkness, actually, one of the reasons they don't like it is darkness is the age of man, the age of regular people, because when all those big souls in the beginning were distributed, one of the souls went to the furtive pygmy so easily forgotten. Well, his soul eventually became humanity, and he existed on the back burners basically forever, and his lineage is us, and the only way we can thrive is if we destroy, or not destroy, but let the flames die and usher in the age of man and stop this endless light cycle that's been strangling the world. So, your choice at the end of the game to continue light or to usher in dark is bigly huge. You could say bigly huge, and my foreign audiences will love that. Yeah, all two of you. Anyway, light is God. Am I really gonna do a? How would I do a yes? Yes, indeed. Forget it. I'll cut this out. I won't. God, I gotta stop getting. Okay, motorcycle guys, fucking me now, which I'm sure you guys won't even hear, and I'm just acting totally unhinged, but that's fine. Anyway, back to me reminding myself that I get on these crazy tangents all the time, especially during these videos. Dark Souls 1, you make these big choices, right? And in Dark Souls 2, it doesn't matter what your choice was in the end of Dark Souls 1, because it's been like thousands of years since then, and whether you let the light go or whether you let the flames die, there's been countless other people like you who have become the Lord of Dark or let light keep on going, and then it's been this sort of madness forever. And it doesn't matter, because if someone does a light thing, then someone will do a dark thing. If someone does a dark thing, then they'll do a light thing. And that these cycles have just been on and off and on and off for centuries. And that what's happening now is sort of just a parallels 10 times removed from what happened in the first game. So for instance, you kill the original gods. In the first game, you kill Lord Gwyn. Well, the old Iron King in Dark Souls 2 is a sort of descendant of Lord Gwyn, not directly like through your family lineage, but metaphorically and spiritually through parallels in their life. Same with Gravelord Nito in the first game. And then in this one you have the Rotten. It's just, different amalgam of death. You have these parallels of all these civilizations and cultures that existed in Dark Souls 1 are totally gone. But everything now is just this sort of mythological progression of it, and much in the ways that we right now will think like, oh yeah, Egypt, they had this thing and they had that, and they had the pyramids and they had pharaohs, but they also had Anubites and they also had scorpion riders and all this, stuff that's obviously like fake, but how folklore sort of adapts through the generations and how people interpret different stories and how those stories change and become myths and legends. Dark Souls 2 is like that. For instance, you have, there's so many different things I can touch upon. In Dark Souls 1, you have, say, the Abyss, which is like this evil void of an area, and you have a covenant you can join called the Abyss Watchers, or the Abyss Walkers. It's hard to remember because they're different iterations of it in each game. And in Dark Souls 2, there's this guy who's like, yeah, there's this ancient art of traversing traversing the abyss that I've kind of studied, and no one else really has, just me, and you can do these kind of crazy things with it. And this idea that this aspect in Dark Souls 1 sort of mutated and diverted and came back and was weird over here, and then kind of, the way it changed throughout time, and now it's this thing in Dark Souls 2. And the interpretation of it in Dark Souls 2 is sort of slightly removed from the truth in Dark Souls 1. And like, what are some other ones? So you have like the Witch of Izalith from Dark Souls 1 was this, one of the all original gods who made all of these, pyromancies and demons and all of that, crazy nonsense. And there are these like little bugs and little creatures that were around her in Dark Souls 1 that sort of are still around and kind of pervading in Dark Souls 2 in these ancient ruins that you find, and in these different, like one of the bosses is like a literal manifestation of, ancient sins and how they've changed over time. And yes, I can see how, going back to the original criticism that Dark Souls 2 is just a fan fiction of Dark Souls 1, it seems more so like a realistic mythology of Dark Souls 1, much like how we today in 2024 America view ancient Greece is vastly different than what ancient Greece was actually like, because we have all these stories and legends and tall tales and folklore that we've told ourselves over the years of what it was like and what actually happened. And in all actuality, we're probably pretty far off the mark of what it was like. But it doesn't make our interpretation any less relevant or any less kind of sort of detached from the truth. And that's why Dark Souls 2 was so interesting, actually. Surprisingly interesting. And maybe it was just the fact I went in so negatively that made me like it and appreciate it for what it was. Because it certainly doesn't look like Dark Souls 1. It doesn't play like it. It's a lot slower. You have to literally level up your speed, your adaptability, your ability to roll and be invincible. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's manageable. And there's a lot of interesting things in Dark Souls 2 that never appeared again, like bonfire aesthetics, getting the ability to go through the same area again and again and again if you want. You have to level up, get more experience, all that. Power stancing, which is like different move sets depending on like weapon combinations, and dual wielding, which is like, why would you never have that again? Why would you only relegate that to Dark Souls 2? The idea that this only happened to me once, and I'll get into the difficulty of the game soon, the idea that after a while enemies stop spawning again because you've killed them too many times, which then helps you get to the boss room, so you have less of a crappy run back and less irritation trying to kill the same guys over and over again if you just want to progress through the game. It's like there were all these really surprisingly innovative ideas in Dark Souls 2 that just never really appeared again. And it's sad. What's funny is like people rag on Dark Souls 2, and some of the stuff that does happen in Dark Souls 2 appears again in Elden Ring, and people say, oh, Elden Ring's so great. It's like, bitches, that's from Dark Souls 2. Go fuck yourselves, you Elden Ring fanboys. But Dark Souls 2 is just, it was a relaxing game in a sense of like, it still had the adventure of Dark Souls 1, the sense that you're exploring this vast world. Nothing will ever top Dark Souls 1 in terms of world design, the way everything is linked together, the way everything makes sense within the world. Dark Souls 2 gets the criticisms that it does deserve. For instance, like, you're in an area called Earthen Peak, which is, what's this? A peak? You're on top of a mountain, or top of a tower, and you take an elevator from on top of the tower, and you go up to where this hellish lava world that makes no sense, It makes sense when you're on the coast in Majula and you go down the coast to Hades Tower of Flame. Oh yeah, sure. And then when are you gonna go to that whatever the annoying pirate area? I'll get to why it's annoying. And that kind of makes sense. But then it's like, okay, you just have, you have the Dragon Eyrie right next to Aldea's Keep, right next to these woods, which is right next to, Majula, yet I can't see any of this, It's just like kind of flat, hilly, like where is this vast dragon mountain that's supposed to be like, logically right next to where I'm at? And, it just kind of seemed like they put less effort into the world. And whereas Dark Souls 1 was like super interwoven and interchangeable and like everything made sense, like it was an actual place someone had lived in, which was why it was so interesting to explore. Dark Souls 2 was more of like, it was less designed like a world and more designed like a video game where you have to kill 4 guys, right? 4 bosses, and you start here, and then one guy is this way on this direct path, one guy is this way on this direct path, and then the other one, and then once you get all of them, you go on this other direct path. And you do have some variety of which one you choose and which order you go in, but ultimately it's kind of just like, meh, The world design just isn't there as much as Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 1, of course. Why some of the areas are irritating is, and I'll give you this, they tried a lot of stuff, and some of it worked, like power stancing, some of it did not. And the darkness mechanic, holy shit, is that irritating. There's one thing for a game to be dark and foreboding and melancholic and eerie and sinister, and to design something so that it's actually like scary and tense. And it's another thing to just have it physically dark and you can't see shit. And in this one, instead of like having a torch as a weapon you could use to light up stuff, they have a torch as like a separate mechanic that you only have so much torch time. And you can only pull out your torch at certain times and then light other flames here and there, but they're super sparse. And you're basically wandering around in darkness, like literal darkness, and you can't see jack shit for so long, like that pirate area. And it's just obnoxious. Like, I get it if you want to, like, make it scary or tense or whatnot, but you have all of Dark Souls 1 as a prime example of how to do that, like, the Dark Souls 1 was tense because you have this monstrosity of an area like Sen's Fortress, and you have one bonfire at the beginning, one save point essentially, and you have a secret bonfire towards the top, which a lot of people don't even know about. And if you die at any point along Sen's Fortress, you're probably going straight back to the beginning. It's a far cry from Sekiro has, their bonfire parallel every fucking 10 feet. Sekiro is just pathetically easy when it comes to the world. The bosses are hard, the world is easy. But Dark Souls 1 had the adventure of this fantastic world, this scary world, this tense world, where a regular-ass enemy could be just as difficult, if not more difficult, than some of the bosses in that game. And Dark Souls 2 kind of has it in certain areas, but it falls short in certain other ones because they just rely on, we're going to make it really dark, so boom, scary. Or we're going to throw a bunch of enemies at you at once, so boom, scary. In terms of like the difficulty and the bosses of it, to be honest, and I will be honest, the boss I died to the most was the Ruined Sentinels, which is kind of an early game boss that I didn't have any good weapons fighting it, to be honest. I got really frustrated because the area to get into the boss is just full of these garbage enemies that just swarm you. And that was the only time in the game where enemies started despawning because I had killed them so many times. And it was just ridiculous. Like, the difficulty wasn't in the area, it wasn't in the boss, it was in just the frustration of the fact that I'm running through darkness and I have all this crap just yanking me and surrounding me, and it's just not fun. In terms of some of the other bosses, a lot of them are kind of pathetic. Like the Covetous Demon is pathetic. The Skeleton Lords. A lot of the bosses are honestly kind of forgettable. In that one, the DLC has exceptional bosses. Holy shit. Honestly, the Burnt Ivory King is one of the best From Software bosses in general. Cerulean is fantastic. Fume Knight's fantastic. The hardest boss for me, honestly, was probably the Dark Lurker. The Dark Lurker was hard as hell for me. And I didn't die to it as much, probably 10 times. Ruined Sentinels was like probably 20 times. Like, I do not usually die that often to it. Dark Lurker was probably 10 to 15. Cerulean was probably 5 to 10. Same with the Burnt Ivory King. Fume Knight, which generally people say is the hardest boss of Dark Souls 2. Maybe it would, 3 to 5 times, I forget. He wasn't that hard because you just have to be aware of his hitbox and his delayed reactions and the fact he goes pretty slow. And this says something about the Dark Souls community as a whole, because there are so many different play styles and equipment loadouts, and spells you might use, weapons you might use, that people have vastly different methods and experiences playing the game. I went as a Dex build because I'm a piece of trash. So, like, being a Dex build against, say, the Fume Knight was pretty easy because you just walk around him, you roll around him, you get out of his way. He's kind of a slow guy. If you're faster than him, you just chop him up to bits. War of attrition, you just break him down and you're fine. But someone like Dark Lurker, who has this incredible physical resistance, who, can split themselves in half and just fires magic shit at you, like, that's difficult. At least for my build at the time. I'm sure other people had an easy time fighting Dark Lurker. I did not. But as a whole, Dark Souls 2 was pretty easy. And I don't know if it's just because I have played all of these games and I'm, an expert now. I thought Dark Souls 1 was hard as hell when I first played it because it was my first introduction into these sorts of games. Now I know what to expect, and I'm a Soulsborne veteran, so I can get through. Oh my god, the peach juice. I can get through them pretty easy, I think. Oh god, Dark Souls 3 now, huh? Dark Souls 3 is the fan fiction of Dark Souls 1. Because in Dark Souls 2 they established, everything from Dark Souls 1 is probably gone now. Because everything has changed so much. But now Dark Souls 3 is like, hey, you remember Katarina? Oh, Katarina's still around. You remember Karim? Karim's still around. You remember, this and that. Oh, here's this guy again. Here's that again. And it's just like, oh, you remember going to Honor Londo? Let's go to Honor Londo again. It's like the Disneyfication of Dark Souls in the sense that it's all, hey, audience member, do you remember that thing you really liked from long ago? Let's come back and we'll give it to you again, but it's slightly different. It just felt, a lot of it felt cheap. A lot of it felt like Miyazaki was like, well, what worked for me before? That thing, let's put it in again. but not really change anything or make any new innovations. And a lot of things I think they threw out the window totally, notwithstanding their lore, which was just kind of like very repetitious. But I gotta change the camera real quick. Hold on. But notwithstanding their lore, which was very repetitious, just a sort of everything that was popular in Dark Souls or throughout all, their Soulsborne stuff is just there again. But, like, and of course, this is the one game where I'm like, yeah, I usually go dex build. I'm gonna go strength build this time. Strength, like, sucks in this one. Poise, like, I guess I don't know. I feel like it doesn't work the same as it did in Dark Souls 1. It's like, it's just crap. The way scaling stuff goes on is crap. You don't have power stancing anymore, or any fun move sets anymore, so it's like, that's kind of a waste. Pyromancy, now you need different stats to utilize. You can't just have a good pyromancy flame. So it's like, okay, now I can't be like a physical weapon user and have some magic stuff for fun. I have to actually invest my experience into magic levels. So that takes away from my physical levels, which is like, that's doing you dirty, making you have stats for pyromancy. Keeping in mind in Dark Souls 2, they had items that let you lower stat requirements. Another great innovation of Dark Souls 2. What the hell is that? Why'd you get rid of all these good ideas? And then so many aspects, I feel, of Dark Souls 3 are just like babyish, so streamlined. A lot of the combat is kind of just like basic attack, basic attack, basic attack. A lot of the sort of the song and dance and rhythm of Dark Souls 1 is gone. It's like they were trying to make it something else. There's like not a lot of strategy to it. It's kind of just like a mindless whacking. And it sort of feels like it's a cross of Dark Souls, the slower, more methodical combat with the hyper speed of Bloodborne. But it doesn't have any of the nuance of Bloodborne because it doesn't go hyper speed enough to be Bloodborne. But at the same time, it's not like slow and methodical enough to be Dark Souls, and it's kind of just weird half-breed in between. I mean, hell, even as like a strength build, it was just like, I don't feel like a tank, I don't feel like my armor protects me. I don't feel like I'm doing enough damage. And I'm doing everything right, And then in terms of the world design, it makes Dark Souls 2 look like, the greatest thing ever. Because Dark Souls 3 is literally a straight fucking line. As you start out in this area, you go here, you go here, you go here. I know you can kill the dancer of the Boreal Valley really early. And go into Lothric Castle, way early if you want. But then it's like, okay, that's one area you can kind of go to. And you can choose to go to Farron Keep or to the Cathedral of the Deep later on. But it's like, okay, you have one choice along the entire game. And it's just which do you want to go to first? Otherwise, it is a direct fucking line. And a lot of it, too, is like, you don't even walk to this place. You teleport. You teleport from the graves to Lothric Castle. You teleport from Lothric Castle to the undead settlement. It's just like, none of it seems connected. It's all so disjointed. And then the world itself, the regular enemies are just abysmal. You just walk through all of them. Notwithstanding the nonsensical fan fiction of, hey, you like this thing from before, and here it is again. A lot of the stuff is just, to me, unimaginative. It's just so repetitious. What else? The story is like, hey, you know how we said previously that the light and dark cycle has gone on forever, doesn't really matter. Well, now we're going to end it for realsies this time, or progress it for realsies this time. either that or a cult kind of hijacks you and gets you to do stuff. And it's just kind of like, none of this means anything. I mean, the final boss is certainly pretty cool. But it just kind of felt kind of bland, you know? What I think was especially apparent in Sekiro, and this is my main critique of Dark Souls 3, was introduced in Dark Souls 3, and that is the fact that it is less of a game and more of a boss rush. In Sekiro, the actual real-world enemies are abysmally easy. The mini-bosses are okay, mostly easy, but it's just a game of bosses. You do this boss, you run to the next boss, you run to the next boss, and you can beat the game in 20 minutes, you know. Shit, even I can beat the game in about an hour, you know, and I'm not that good, you know, at speedrunning or at video games. Once you've played it a few times, I can beat it in about an hour, because it's just running from one boss to the next. And in Dark Souls 3, you really get that, yeah, it's just a straight line of a world, and you kind of piddle around here and there fighting these enemies, but you're mostly just trying to kill the bosses. And some of the bosses are really good. I know its boss design gets praised a lot, and I kind of agree, but kind of with Dark Souls 2, because the world itself is not as good as the Dark Souls 1 world. It's not tense, it's not scary, it doesn't grip you and you think, oh my god, if I die here, I lose all this stuff, I can't get back, it's gonna be so hard, I gotta do this thing again. You don't really get any of that because you kind of breeze through most of it. W. Price didn't understand when I told her, but okay, well, jumping ahead, I killed the Nameless King on my 6th try, and I killed Slave Nightingale on my 1st try. I don't give a fuck if you don't believe me, I did it, and actually my dog was there too, so you can ask him. But most of the bosses I found in Dark Souls 3 were actually, while more interesting and I think better designed, were easier, even than Dark Souls 2. The hardest boss for me, Dark Eater Madir, but besides him, who was so far above and beyond everything else, honestly, the Twin Princes really screwed me. I probably took 10 attempts on that. I don't know how high that is ranked on the difficulty of bosses, but just because of my playstyle, my slower strength felt like I got rocked on the Twin Princes. Nameless King, like I said, I thought I was going to be there forever because I keep hearing the Nameless King is like the best, hardest, most difficult boss ever. And maybe I was just so calm. But that was one where I was explicitly keeping track of how many times I attempted him, and I got him on my 6th try. I'm like, oh, that wasn't really that bad, you know? Soul of Cinder, the last boss, which is basically just the previous iterations of yourself. That was a really fun fight, but it was like my 2nd or 3rd try, not too hard. The DLC stuff, Sister Freed, was also probably my 5th, maybe 4th or 5th try. Not really that. You just take it slow, people. Take it slow. Pay attention to them. Don't worry if you have to roll around and block for the first 2 minutes of the fight to nail their attack patterns down. Just take it easy, you know. And we'll skip Dark Eater Madir and we'll go to Slave Nightingale because holy shit, what a fight! What an incredible fight! But I guess I'd kill him on my 1st try. I really did. His 1st phase, yeah, I mean, it was okay. Pretty standard. His 2nd phase was neat. In his 3rd phase, I actually did have to, try because he had, his 4 jumping combo where you actually have to dodge a lot. And you have, a half a second window to strike him, but, just be patient. Word of attrition. It's Dark Souls, you just gotta be patient. But the Slave Nightingale fight is a great example to me of what is wrong with modern FromSoft games and what is especially wrong in Elden Ring, kind of like how the pace of Dark Souls 3 led to the problems of Sekiro. I think some of the boss design in Dark Souls 3 led to some of the boss design problems in Elden Ring. And it's one of the main reasons I don't like Elden Ring. And that is this sort of this shock and awe design. Because when you get Slave Nightingale, who, by the way, is like the final Dark Souls boss, the hardest Dark Souls boss, final of the DLC that is, the downloadable content, for those uninitiated. When you get to his last phase, there's like lightning bolts coming down around him. He's shooting lightning at you. There's like these red manifestations of souls he's shooting at you. There's a lot of just magic shit flying around. And I think the intent is for you to be like, oh my god, and panic and get scared, and then get killed by it. But a lot of it, even if you don't even bother trying to get out of it, doesn't affect you. Like, the lightning never hit me, never got really that close to me. The soul blast stuff, we just kind of sidestep. It was just a case of, it looks really, really cool, but it's not actually challenging. It's style over substance. It's, how can we make the most bombastic laser light show imaginable? But if you ignore all that, it's just kind of a simple fight. And I think Slave Nightingale, at his core, is a very simple fight. I just think there's a lot going on to distract you from that fact. And that's what people focus on. And that's why they slip up, and that's why they think he's so hard. Because he kills them instantly, because they're looking at the laser light show. I gotta finish. I'm honestly not really feeling any of like the alcohol of any of this. And I feel like I've been ranting too much that the rant has got me, got me through the liquor. But I want to finish here on Dark Eater Medir, which was probably, I didn't die as much as the Rune Sentinels for some reason. Probably about 15 to 20 attempts, I don't know. But above and beyond the hardest and best boss in Dark Souls 3, the Rune Sentinels aren't that hard, by the way. It's just that the shenanigans around them are irritating and frustrating and whatever. But with Dark Eater Medir, he's this giant blackish, purplish, bluish dragon who shoots, fire and like nuclear light bolts, and he's a deadly motherfucker. And he is a boss that is the epitome of boss design, and it's like, why the fuck cannot all the Dark Souls 3 bosses be like this? All the Bloodborne bosses were like that. Most of them, at least. Most of the Dark Souls 1 bosses were like that. And what I mean by his design is the fact that you can't cheat it. It's not a thing of like, oh, if I have this one build of sorceries, or this one build of pyromancies, or this one play style of doing this or that, then he's easier. Like, Dark Eater Medir is a boss that there's no easy way around. You have to do it. You have to learn how to fight him. And just like in Bloodborne, Father Gascoigne is the hardest boss ever until you actually put in the work and figure out how to beat him. And then he's a piece of cake. Same with Dark Eater Medir. He is so punishing with his physical attack combos, his charges, the fact he takes up half the fucking arena, the fact even him just brushing you damages you, the fact he has 10 different, magic, fire, lightning, whatever attacks that demolish you, and there's no easy way around it. You have to learn how to dodge, how to block, how to evade, how to do all of that, and legitimately beat him. And he's such a legitimate test of your mettle that was so omnipresent in Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne that it's just like, well, I'm glad you gave me this boss at the very end of the game, but where was he the first 20 hours? I did take about 20 hours to beat Dark Souls 3, and then it was like 40 hours for Dark Souls 2. I don't know why Dark Souls 2 felt so much longer, or at least, I don't know, maybe the DLC was better, maybe there was more areas. Dark Souls 3, like I said, just kind of a boss run. But, Dark Eater Medir was just so impressive. It was just so fun, so fantastic. And I think music was like the only music other than the Soul of Cinder, for reasons we all know, was memorable, was good. And I'm a huge music guy, and I could probably hum you the entirety of the score for Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1. They're incredible. My God. And every track is unique and exciting and ominous and perfectly fits the fight. And then Dark Souls 2 is like totally forgettable. Dark Souls 3, you have some hits in there, here and there. And it's just like, where did the music go for these games? My God, like. And maybe it's just because, well, I don't think it's because of the fact that, you know, I beat the bosses a lot quicker now, so I hear the music less. But I don't think it's that, because I've listened to the soundtracks just on YouTube. Here on YouTube, where you can follow Emprise Can Read, which you should. Like and subscribe, pound that like button, turn the notification bell, what have you. And I've listened to their scores all across YouTube, and it's just like, it's just not memorable. Dark Intermediate is good, Soul of Cinder is good, the rest is just kind of meh, you know. And there are some good fights, but the good fights don't really take that long, you know, and it's just, I wish I had the quality of Dark Souls 1 back, of Bloodborne back, before the creators of these games didn't have this tremendous pressure on them, and this tremendous spotlight on them. And just say, well, people like our bosses, let's just have a boss rush, and who cares if we copy and paste some, like we copy and pasted a lot in Sekiro, and pretty much half copy and pasted everything in Elden Ring, you know, because they won't notice, they won't care, they just want the bosses, they just want to stream on Twitch. You know, forget your core audience. And maybe I think that's what my biggest gripe is with how From Software games have progressed. I think they have forgot their core audience. They're not adventure games anymore. It's not a game where you... Maybe that's it in general. They are games now, you know. At their start, they weren't even, you know, not even an adventure game. It was a world that you lived in. It was like going to Middle Earth when you read Lord of the Rings. The amount of detail and precision and care that went into Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne, and I can only imagine Demon's Souls, is unparalleled to how Dark Souls 2, 3, and Elden Ring are kind of just like, you know, I don't want to do a big clap to scare you, but sort of slapped together, you know, and it's just disappointing, because there could have been so much more. And this is not to say that they're garbage games, they're crappy games. I still play them, I like them. You know, I'd rather play these games than most other games that are out today. But what could have been if they just cared a little more? If they didn't give in to the pressure of all those around them, and just focused on making a living, breathing in a world that you just want to be a part of. Yeah, I'm not buzzed at all after drinking. These do have alcohol in them, right? Yeah, they do. Like I said, they're mostly fruit syrup, it feels like. And now we have the apple and the raspberry flavor left. Yeah, I'll give the raspberry one to W price. Yeah. But anyway, as I'm sure you can imagine from my ranting, my main critique of Sekiro is, yes, it's just kind of a boss rush. And the copy and pasting, the fact that you fight several of the same bosses twice or even 3 times in the same areas and the same mini bosses, is just like, come on, you guys are better than this. And Elden Ring is the definition of, you have this huge world, but there's nothing in it. You know, it's just so empty. Elden Ring is the only From Software game that I started looking up stuff halfway through just to like skip past the nonsense, just to like get it over with It's the only game, to me, I didn't finish because I didn't explore every inch. I just got bored with it. I beat all the core bosses, went to all the core areas, and it was just like, okay, I'm done. I don't care. I got all the achievements. I just don't care, you know? I haven't played the Shadow of the Erdtree yet because I'm just not interested in it. And maybe it'll be just like Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 where 10 years from now I play Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm like, oh my god, this is a game-changing thing. I love Elden Ring now, but, you know, we'll see. I just legitimately have no interest in it now. I really hope that their next game is an original IP like Sekiro or Bloodborne. I don't want an Elden Ring 2. I don't want a Dark Souls 4. I don't even want a Bloodborne 2 or a Sekiro 2. I want a new thing. And in my heart of hearts, it's like a sci-fi thing, you know, like the the FromSoft formula, but we want a return to form and world design, but like, you know, fighting aliens and going to different planets and having guns and lightsabers, and, you know, I just think it'd be kind of fun. But whatever they do, I'm sure it'll sell and make $1 billion, and everyone will love it, even if it isn't the best. Anyway, that's just me. I'm just a jaded asshole. And I am M. Price. As you know, by being here, M. Price can read. I hope that this video, this rant, helps you sleep. Because you have, as you know, Dog City never sleeps. I hope that you may sleep now.